Hey there everybody. Today I'm going to edit a photo from 2022 Ironman 70.3 Waco in Lightroom and Photoshop. My name is Scott Flathouse. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Let's get started. So today for this video I'm editing a photo of professional triathlete Ben Deal riding his Tri-Rig Omni Ultimate in the rain at Ironman 70.3 in Waco last year. And this will be a particularly challenging edit because it was a miserable day out there, and you can see here in the rain we've got it's a miserable day to take pictures, as I'm sure is also a miserable day for the riders because they're out there and you can see the raindrops flying off the wheels, and they're just concentrating trying to stay upright on the road. He's got his visor up so he can see, and really squinting against the rain splashing in his face. So let's see what we can do here. I've already applied some edits, so let's create a virtual copy and reset it back to the straight out of the camera. So I've created a virtual copy there. We're going to hit reset, and this is what the photo looks like coming straight out of the camera. The lighting is it's hard to tell where the sun is coming from because it's so cloudy and rainy, and everything just looks dark. The sky is featureless. We're going to try to pull out some detail, but I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and replace the sky with some storm clouds or something that makes it look a little more ominous. All right, but let's see what we can do here. I can tell that from the histogram up here that we don't have much information in the whites, so we're just going to bring the whites up a little bit. And that looks about okay, and then we'll bring the shadows up too, just so we can have a little more detail on him. There it is. Right, he's got a really colorful kit here, and it's kind of hard to tell just because of the flat lighting, but a lot of colors in here. We're going to try to bring out the reds and yellows in it. Try to make those pop a little bit while preserving his skin tone. All right, so that's looking better. Try to bring the highlights down and bring those down all the way. And then we'll add a little bit of dehaze. We can add a lot of dehaze. Let's see a little bit of sensor dust, or that might be a raindrop on the lens. I'm not going to worry too much about that because I'm going to replace this guy altogether, I think. Okay, so when I look at the histogram, this looks fairly balanced. A lot of light is showing up, but that's because the sky is causing the histogram to be a little heavily weighted on this side. I think that's okay. Let's go down here to enable profile corrections. Always want to do that. I was shooting these photos today with the Canon 1DX Mark II and the Canon 70-200 f2.8, which is kind of like my go-to lens. Let's look at the camera settings. So I was shooting wide open just because it was pretty dark at f2.8, ISO 100, and 1/320th of a second. And that slow of a shutter speed allows for some blur, a lot of blur in the wheels and the spokes of wheels, and also the water and stuff splashing around is blurred. And I kind of like that because that gives a little bit of drama to the image. Okay, I think the other thing we might do here, let's go ahead and use the masking tool in Photoshop to select the subject. And it does a great job of selecting the subject, and we're just going to bring the exposure up just slightly. There we go. And then take the blacks down just to increase the contrast some. Maybe bring the whites up. How about saturation? Nah, we'll do saturation later. Okay. I think that's good. The other thing I see about this photo is the background here, this field in the background that was pretty much all brown grass. I think that's, I really don't like that color of yellow. I think it's too saturated, and I think it's, well, we're gonna have to do something about it. Let's see if we can do something here. Let's create a new mask and select the background, and maybe just drop the saturation a little bit. I think that's good. So the only color I want to see really is going to be coming off of his kit. I think this is going to be a nice contrast here. Okay. So now, can we do something with the calibration? I think if we drop the green, that's going to further desaturate the this kind of yellowish and greenish grass in the background. And I always like to bring up the reds without oversaturating the skin tone, and maybe bring up the blues as well. A little too much red. Okay. All right. I think I've taken it about as far as I can in Lightroom. Let's go to Photoshop. So I'm going to hit Command E for export, and that brings it right into Photoshop. Do a little check on the horizon. I think he was on a little bit of a downhill slope. It looks pretty good to me, but let's hit C for the crop tool. Then I'm using the straighten tool, and I'm just going to drag a line right over there. Okay. And while we're in here, we'll take a look. I think the rule of thirds works pretty well in this photo. His head is right at the intersection of one of the horizontal and vertical lines. And I kind of like the way that on this top third, his body is kind of lined up with that. So that looks pretty good. All right, we'll take that crop. And now let's see if we can find a sky that has a little bit of interest in it. So we'll go to Edit, Sky Replacement. And obviously that sky is not going to work. I don't think any of these blue skies. May have to go load up a sky. Put a rainbow in there. That's actually not too bad. That's kind of cool. Let's see what else we got though. Here we go. This was kind of more in line with what I was thinking. And I think this is one of the default Photoshop skies. And the problem with these skies is that they're all in focus. And so you can see that the background is out of focus. I'm shooting at f2.8, so a lot of bokeh going on. And the sky would not be in focus even if it did look like that at the time. But I know how to fix it. So let's use it and we'll fix it. All right. So we're going to go ahead and match up the color as best we can. Do we like this? Let's flip it around and see what that looks like. Oh, I kind of like that a little better. Got some mountains in the background. The mountains around Waco, Texas. Maybe increase the scale. Okay, so now we've got the sky kind of looking like how we want it. I'm just playing around with the sliders a little bit more, just trying to see. One thing we want to avoid is this kind of halo area where it intersects with the horizon. So we sure want to avoid that. There we go. Pulling that up. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now the only problem with the sky is that it's too much in focus. And here you can really see like there's maybe a fence post and there's some trees and bushes and things out here on this ridge. And those are all totally out of focus, but then we see the details in the clouds here that are in focus. So let's fix that. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick the sky layer, and we're going to turn off all the other layers and just look at the sky layer. And we're going to blur it, and we'll go up here to filter and blur. And most of the time when you blur something, you use this Gaussian blur, and that would work, but I think the lens blur does a better job. So Photoshop has this filter lens blur that is designed specifically to, like your lens is out of focus. And so let's have a look and see. I like to set this up with an octagon shape. It allows you to put in some details, and it's supposed to simulate a camera lens with an iris. And if you know anything about the camera lenses, irises have blades, so they can open and shut and adjust the aperture. An octagon is the most number of blades that Photoshop offers, so I like to use that. And then the radius here is, this is where most of the work is done on this radius slider. So you can see here at a low radius, there's not much blurring that takes place. And so we'll increase it. If you go all the way, this looks like it might have been taken with like an f1.2 lens that's wide open. I don't think we need that much. I did shoot this at 2.8. Now, unfortunately, with this filter, Photoshop doesn't let us interact with the rest of the image. So we kind of have to eyeball it. If we don't like it, we can step back and do it again until we get it how we like it. There's a few other sliders here. I usually don't don't mess with that too much. So this looks pretty good. Let's take a look and see how this looks with the rest of the image. So I'm going to turn the mask back on and all the other layers back on. And I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so now that we have the sky looking how it should be as far as being a little bit out of focus, I'm noticing though there's still a little bit of haloing here on the horizon that I don't like. I'm going to adjust this mask. Well, there's a few things. So let's take a look at the mask that Photoshop has generated for us. I do see some problems here. So it looks like the mask tried to block out some of the helmet, and see that, well, let's take a look at the mask here. Yeah, so I'm going to, and then we got some weird stuff going on here that Photoshop did. So let's adjust this mask some. So really I want the whole thing to be black here, so none of the sky should be bleeding through the rider. So I'm going to take my brush tool and we're going to paint black on the mask. And as I get close to the edge, I'll be a little more careful. And there we go. All this should be masked out. Sometimes Photoshop does a pretty good job of this, and it looks like, I think it's because there's so little contrast in the scene that Photoshop has a hard time with it. I think some of this is sky and some of it belongs on the mask. So one trick that we can do here, so I could use the pen tool, and we could, let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to move over here to the pen tool. I'm just going to quickly make an outline here along his helmet, because his helmet should have nice smooth edges. Here we go, something like that. If y'all are interested in learning how to use the pen tool, let me know. It took me a long time to get used to it. Okay, we'll just pick up some that area there. So we're going to make a selection out of it. I'm going to feather it by half a pixel. And then we're going to the brush tool and just paint black all inside the selection. And I'm just going along here with the mouse. just painting this all black. We want, there we go. Some of it is not going to be that noticeable. So let's take a look. There we go. Really though, I think this area in here really needs to be white on the mask so that it so we let the sky through. And so let's just create another path here with the pen tool. I do like the pen tool because it makes a super clean edge. But it's not always the fastest tool to work with. So kind of the secret to the pen tool is this click and drag technique. Where you click on the edge where you want the line, and then you can kind of drag. Here, let me get to one of these spots. All right, so, and then you drag, and then you can adjust to get the curve to where you need it to be. When you drag, Photoshop generates these little handles, and then you can adjust the length and the rotation of the handle to adjust the curve. There it is, right there. Looking good. And then if you don't get the point position just right, you can hit Command and then drag the point around where you need it to be. All right, so we're going to make a selection, and we're going to make all this white with the brush tool. I'm going to make my foreground color white. And we're just going to take a nice soft brush and make all this white. And then along here, where the edge of that mask was, we can just kind of, another trick is to switch over to a soft light blending mode for the brush. And what this does is it protects the darker areas. Or whatever opposite color the brush is. All right, so let's see what we did here. Oh, that looks so much better. Yeah, so that kind of dark part of the cloud, we wanted it to really be showing there. Okay. All right. Oh, let's switch back to normal on the brush. It's always important to remember to do that. And switch back to black. I want to mask out this area right there. We can just go through here. Anything that's light colored, Photoshop thought it needed to be part of the sky. So like kind of the highlights on his fingers, and he's got looks like a gel or something here. Oh, let's go through here and get this cleaned up. Okay. Yeah. We can do that again a little bit better. Whoa. Okay. Here we go. All right. Okay, so now we have, what's going on here? Let's get this centered again. Let's work on this. So I'm going to take the gradient tool and we're going to go to foreground to transparent. All right, and it's the foreground color is black. And what I'm going to do is add a gradient to this mask here. And that's too much. Usually what I'll do is put this about 10% opacity. And then we're just going to kind of feather this in and get rid of that little halo area that was on that right there. So that looks pretty good right there. All right. Okay, great. Now I've got the sky looking like it should. I've got the mask conditioned. Now let's work on the colors some. So I always start at the top with the reds, and we got a little bit of red going on here, plus his skin tone. It looks a little bit orange now. But we're really going to make this red pop here. So, and to do that, I'm going to pull the cyans out of the red. So cyan is the opposite of red, and when you take the cyans away, the red becomes much more saturated. And I generally like to add a little bit of yellow too. To warm up the reds. Boy, that really is making his skin turn orange. Let's look at the yellows. So the yellows, I want to desaturate the yellows. So I'm going to add some cyan. If I add a lot of cyan, that looks horrible. But maybe somewhere in there. Maybe pull the yellows out. So that takes away some of the orange from the skin. So red and yellow make orange. I think that looks a little more natural. Plus I want to take some of the yellow out of the background here too, and I may end up having to mask that and desaturate it. Let's see how far we can go here. Yellows, greens, not. Let's see what we can do with the greens. A little bit of green. I like to add cyan to the greens, make it a little more bluish green. And to desaturate it, I'll add some magenta. And on the cyan, so the cyans are some cyan in his helmet and on his kit. And we can make that saturated. It looks like the sky has some cyan as well. And some blues. Here's where we're really going to see. Yeah, when I pull the yellows out of the blues and saturate the blues, there we go. And then don't think I really want to do anything there. Magentas, maybe add a little bit of magenta. So that kind of cools off the blues some. If you add too much, it turns into purple. Don't like that. All right. And magenta. Is there any magenta in here? Usually there's very little magenta. It looks like there is some in his kit there. And I'm going to go ahead and pull it all out. I think all that needs to be blue. Okay. And on the whites, what I'll do is pull a little bit of black from the whites. And what that does is just helps increase the contrast some. If you do too much, then it looks horrible. But usually around maybe minus 4, 5, 6, somewhere around there. And then on the blacks, I will, if you pull too much out of the blacks, then it just really starts looking awful, but a little bit gives it a little bit of a faded look. And I think that works really well on this this kind of rainy atmosphere. I'm still thinking this background area here is a little too much. So let me just go to hue saturation. This is kind of a brute force method and just pull that saturation back some. And that's going to pick up his skin tone too, because this is like some of the yellows and stuff. But a little bit looks like it's okay. I think we can get away without having to mask it. All right. And I think the sky is a little bit too blue, so we can go and adjust the sky since it's on a separate layer. Let me add a hue saturation to this clipping mask layer, and we're just going to pick one of the really blue areas and start to desaturate it. There we go, something like that. I don't want to pull it all out because then it looks unnatural, but maybe a little bit of blue left in there. Okay. Yeah, that looks good. All right, and then let me add a curves layer and we will bring back some more contrast here. And the way we do that is just, we're gonna drag this down over here and maybe this up a little bit. Maybe not so much. maybe about like that. All right. And then what I'll do is I'll stamp visible and create a new layer. And then we're going to go over here to the camera raw filter. And I'm going to add some clarity. And what clarity does is adds some contrast where it finds edges. And I don't generally like to use a lot of clarity because it makes the skin look horrible, and I can mask it off, but I think a little bit is okay in this image. It really starts to highlight where those water droplets are, and I like that. Let's see what dehaze does. Dehaze adds some more contrast back, but it also darkens it up, so I like to counteract that with a little bit of shadows, pulling up the shadows. So I'll kind of work these two sliders together generally. And then I think that's pretty good. I think we look pretty good in the sky. We've added some depth and drama to the sky. Maybe a little bit of grain. This adds to the whole grittiness feel of this this photo. There we go. All right, I think that looks pretty good. I think this is something that I would post on Instagram. All right, thanks everybody for watching, and I would appreciate it if you would like and subscribe to my channel. That really helps me with developing content for you guys. Thanks again.